Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another inquiry series with Michelle Terrill-Heath, where we unpack her lovely Substacks that are written. So we have some audio here for you. Michelle, this one was about dementia again, and we like to talk about the hard things, but make it much easier for these listeners, hopefully, right? And I think the biggest thing that this takeaway for me is that you're really helping guide us, and the purpose of your work, especially in your wildest dreams, the Parkinson's love story, is to guide us through the labyrinth of emotions and experiences and misinformation that's out there. And I think I kind of got that from this part one, patients with dementia. Can you explain to me a little bit, you just your process, why we're on dementia for 2 weeks now? Because it's an ongoing
Yeah,
thing.
and we're gonna keep it on it for a little while, I think. Um, because dementia is such a huge, uh, health issue in our world right now, and has been, but it's growing as our population ages and as these brain diseases that cause and, create dementia continue to be on the rise. There's more and more of it, and there's more and more, need, in my view, to not only understand it to some as best as we can, but also to be on the forefront of care so that really we're not just winging it, going, I don't know, they're crazy. I don't know what to do with them. But that we actually have strategies and science based understandings of what's going on and are able to help our loved ones and other people that we are in our lives, our friends that end up with dementia, to actually continue to live lives that are purposeful and worthwhile and interesting and, most importantly, healthy for them and not just stuck off in a place because it's not understood. And there's more than, dementia is not an one size fits all experience. So it's very interesting because the type of dementia that Andy's working with now, that we're working with, isn't the one called Alzheimer's, where often the patient forgets who their loved ones are or can't recognize faces or forgets things like that. That's not the case in this situation. So, more people, most people ask me all the time, they ask me, well, what will happen when Andy doesn't know you anymore? And I'm like, I don't think that'll ever happen. That's not really
Well,
problem.
but you're preparing, I think, yourself and also just anybody in your shoes for a late stage dementia. You're already doing the research in
But
this,
late stage dementia for Andy likely won't include not knowing people in his life because his type of dementia, that's not one of the symptoms.
and that's
So,
cool. And
unless he developed a different type of dementia, but I never knew that, and I don't think a lot of people know that, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
In the Substack, you're turning to people who have had late stage dementia. You give actually 4 plus examples, Andy's
yep.
cousin, and then, Dawn, the organization.
Well, the Judy Cornish, the lady who started Dawn, is a pretty amazing woman. Everything I read that she's written and watching her TED Talks, and she's just she's a real pioneer on the forefront of helping all of us understand dementia, and I want to amplify her work and also add to it with my own, um, with my own experiences. So,
Amazing. I think part of the journey I've been through with you on this has really been, like, Andy first got diagnosed, and I think the worst case scenarios just started blowing through the family, like, what's gonna happen, and there's a little bit of that there even with the dementia creeping in, that you're just like, "Hey, it's good to map out this ecosystem to figure out who's there to help and to kinda get us all on the same caregiving and patient understanding," which is a big understanding, and one of the understandings that you bring to us is kind of what changes and what doesn't change when it comes to dementia. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I sure can. And I do have to give a shout out to the lady Judy Cornish because this is really from her work and it's also my experience. When when somebody begins their journey with dementia, no matter what type of dementia it is, uh, what my understanding is that the emotional body really is not susceptible to dementia. So people still have feelings that are their true feelings. People are not feeling sad when they're really not sad. People are not feeling happy when they're not really happy. Emotions in our body systems continue to function really well. And what can happen to somebody with dementia, or what has in the past, is they can be institutionalized or ignored or kind of put on notice, like, you don't have rights anymore, so just stand back and be quiet. And the mostly I think that's happened out of ignorance and also out of fear. And so those are powerful. Ignorance and fear are powerful motivators. So, um, what I'm trying to help, you know, put the focus on is that dementia, the emotional part of somebody with dementia is pretty much intact. And so made them feel good, what made them feel bad, what makes them feel their emotions are still gonna be right there.
So,
When somebody loved tiramisu before they had dementia, and it made them feel happy to have a big plate of tiramisu dessert in front of them, they're probably still gonna like that. And so, even though they might not show it or say it, they're gonna feel. And so it's a really cool opportunity to start to get into the feeling centers of somebody more than the action or executive function or even memories. Although memories can be used, but just be in the moment and bring up something that can make somebody feel something, and there you go.
that's great. And I think it's the difference between the cognitive and the, emotional. That's what you're
Mhm.
talking about here is the cognitive is changing, but the emotional is not changing. And you had even mentioned in the article, a special, I think it's like a palliative care home or some kind of design that included having parakeets and dogs around and things that, and music
A
or what.
brilliant, brilliant doctor and author, Atul Gawande, who many people have read his book called Being Mortal, and I think it was like a New York Times bestseller or some such thing. And his work is very, very, uh, on the forefront of this type of situation, and it's not really focused on dementia as much as it is focused on, homes for the aged and, nursing home type situations. And there were some experiments that he goes over in his book, and yes, people with dementia, this includes, is people can be responsible for the care of something else, whether it's a parakeet cleaning up after them or feeding them or a little dog or a cat. They That increases their ability to, uh, be well, to take care and to take care of themselves and to feel like they're valuable, then by, like, exponentially. So, yes, it sounded a little wacky when he wrote about it, but they introduced into one nursing home something like, you know, 20 dogs and 100 parakeets and a bunch of cats, and they just started testing, and the patients were so much happier,
Mm,
like, so much happier than they were before. So, I think it can be small things. A lot of, nursing homes, one of the nursing homes I was in Canada, last, summer, we, uh, brought a dog in with us, and it wasn't only for the man we were visiting, but all the people enjoyed seeing the dog, and the dog came in a stroller. And it was uh, our friend's wife's dog, and it was just it just changes the energy. So, I think the idea isn't necessarily that it has to be an animal, but some sort of way to care for something besides yourself or have your own life be of value to someone or something besides yourself is really an important part of being human.
In the article, you also mention the Ram Dass quote saying, "We're all just walking each other home." And because this is part one and you're focused mostly on patients and part two is coming, spoiler alert,
Yep.
listeners, it's going to be about the caregivers. There is definitely a walk home going on between this relationship between caregivers and patients. And so, while we won't touch on it too much here because that will happen in another inquiry series in the future, if you're listening, stay tuned. But it does seem like you touch a bit on the caregivers feeling a little bit more of the loss than the patients do in this case because they carry this grief that's like, you know, language memory, the mutual, idea that someone can share with you gets lost somehow. And so caregivers do seem to experience this very differently than a patient would. And if you want to just talk on that very briefly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great, uh, thing to bring up. So,
Foreshadowing.
right,
Foreshadowing.
caregivers, it just just in the in the job description of a caregiver, just in the name even, you're giving care, you're caregiving, you're not receiving, you're giving. And so a lot of times that giving part can be overwhelming for a caregiver because no human being is capable of giving without receiving, um, for very long. And so or I should say chronically, like ongoing. And what I've learned is that honestly in the relationship of caregiver and patient, and this is I'm not talking about professional caregivers who go into a home for a few days a week and then have their own life separately. I'm really talking about family caregivers. So children, parents, spouses, mothers, fathers, when you're caring for someone in your family and it's ongoing, so it's kind of implied that it's going to go until they're no longer with us. Um, it can get really imbalanced so that the caregiver feels depleted, exhausted, frustrated, and the patient seems also to be taking rather than giving. And there's just been a lot of ways I've learned that I will share in the next Substack actually more than now about how the caregiver can receive from the patient even, but also from the outside world and what it takes for that to happen so that the imbalance the inherent imbalance in the relationship doesn't just get out of control and create situations that cause a lot of harm, like with resentment or anger or not caring for oneself, neglect type of thing.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to hear all about that because I think that is the pinnacle of our society is figuring out how to take care of our, beloved caregivers because without them, whether it be professional or personal, we don't have anything, you know what I mean? And really, I love this Ram Dass quote because there is a sense in society that we do need, well, it would be nice, it's a hope that we would, and it's something that you're also bringing up with your work, which is why I love being part of it is that care for each other. We're all walking each other home, but we're also really responsible for each other's children, for each other's elderly, for the people in our neighborhood. And I feel so much of that is deteriorated in our society, even in the communities that I live in, small ones. Elderly can not have family and maybe can't afford care and don't have anyone to care for them. And the same with children, of course. Coming from foster care and orphan stuff,
Yep.
it's very present. So it's just something that I'd like listeners to think about, and it's something that we'll look forward to talking about next time, is the idea of how to keep our caregivers healthy and to get them in the reciprocity or the symbiosis zone so that you know, it doesn't feel like they're depleted. Michelle, one of the best things before we get off, is that I just want to say what I love so much about all of your Substacks is you're helping all of us live well, whether we're patients or caregivers. And so in this case, it seems like, animals, anything with emotional safety, music, kind explanations you mentioned actually, like it being very patient to explain things. I think in the maybe you want to talk a little bit about the German woman that you were talking about because I thought that was very cute. We would just share before we go. It's a example of one of these things about how to keep the patient well, really.
Yeah. So this really, really amazing woman, her life was there could be a book written about her life. It's so amazing. And she ended up in her 80s in a memory care home, and she stayed there until she passed. And we used to visit her regularly before COVID came on. And when we would visit her, what was so interesting to me is she felt comfortable with me. She knew who I was, and she knew who Andy was, and she felt comfortable with me to ask me very hard questions. And I was not nearly as astute about this subject as I am now at that time. So it was more just going with my gut. And I talk about the question she asked me in the Substack, but there was another question she asked me. In the Substack, she asked me, "Do I know where her car is? And that this is such a nice hotel she's in, but when does she get to go home?" And I, both cases, decided that honesty was the best policy. So I told her that I believed her son had her car and that I thought that she lived there now. And she didn't go like, "Oh, no," or anything. She just went, "Oh, thank you. Okay." So I think sometimes we don't give people going through things as patients, and especially with dementia, enough credit for things they can understand. And I'll just share at the end the hardest question she ever asked me. I didn't share in the Substack, but I'm going to share it now. Is she said to me, "Michelle, do people talk about me now like I'm one of those crazy people who doesn't know anything?"
Oof. Wow. I felt that. That's any oh, that's gotta be so hard because if you're slightly aware that you're just there, oh, that's tough. What did you say?
Well,
How did you
I
respond?
said, "Yep, they do."
Amazing.
And I said, "What we're really happy about is that you're in this place that seems like a good place for you to live your life
Mm,
and to be able to do the things you can do.
yeah.
And I'm just glad I get to visit you." But I really it took me a long pause because I was like, that is what people say. They say, "Oh, she's been moved to the memory care, she's got dementia, she's got this, she's got that." And they're not talking badly about her. But she was remembering days, maybe what she would talk about somebody like, "Oh, they got moved, they had to do this." And so I don't know if that was the right thing. I don't even know today. But I do know that when I answered her honestly, she accepted it and she didn't burst out crying or anything. She just accepted it as something that now she could try to live with. Um, I think that just my gut tells me that that is better than, um, people lying to you,
Mm.
and always you're gonna feel like, "I don't something's missing. I don't understand. I don't know, and something's missing." That's how she was with her car. "Where's my car?"
Yeah.
When she knew her son had it, she's like, "Oh, okay, well, then I won't worry about it."
Well, I think, Michelle, whether we are right or wrong, and I appreciate your humility in that, the point is that everything that I know you to do and the work that you're engaged in really is about approaching life with like dignity and safety and warmness and being emotionally held, like the logic is there. And of course, logic is like, oh, was this the right approach? And we all make mistakes. But I think the biggest thing you can do as a caregiver, possibly, or even as a human being, is just to really be kind and to transmit an energy of, yes, this might be the honest thing. No, it might not be right, but I come in love and you're loved. And that's the space you're really talking about when it comes to patients.
Later later, I decided I thought about this a long time, as you can imagine, when it happened. It was years ago now, but later, I thought, I would never in a million years tell her something like that unless she asked me.
Of course. See, that's the thing.
So, when somebody asks you something,
Yeah.
there seems like it's almost like an open door. Like, you're like, "Okay, now
You're a person of dignity as well, so it's,
you're put on the spot," but that's alright.
exactly. Well, Michelle, we can't wait to read your part 2 caregivers in this series, and of course, you're gonna join us all
You
for
guy.
another talk in 2 weeks as we continue these inquiry series around a way through, we've got a rats
come out on Thanksgiving in the US. So that'll be a really lovely time.
Know the schedule, and that's true. I mean, it's a good time to give thanks for everything. Yeah, so please, if you're liking these conversations, let us know. Like, say something in the comments, maybe share some of your own dementia stories. Like, share, subscribe, all those things really help us. And of course, we do have a roundtable coming up with Medtronic, which Michelle did mention in the Substack. So stay tuned next year in early 2026, where we're going to be joined by some incredible speakers about
Oof, yeah.
how to support caregivers. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us again today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Sky. Bye-bye.